How many of you are familiar with this image? A few of you. Okay, this is one of my favorite images from one of my favorite spacecrafts, Voyager 1. And if you can see this tiny pale blue speck of a pixel there, that's Earth as seen from about 4 billion miles away. So that's where you can find me if you need me. But, but the reason why I love images like these so much is because it shows us how space exploration often changes our view of ourselves and our place in the universe. But a lot of my work focuses on changing how we view space exploration. The relationship that most of us have with space exploration is one of observation. We're often watching government agencies and astronauts exploring on behalf of us, but we ourselves aren't doing much exploring. And this relates to my own personal story, because I don't have a background in science or space. I actually was rather tunnel-focused throughout my career. I was very tunnel-focused specifically on becoming an executive creative director. For some reason, as a young teenager, I got it in my head that being an executive creative director represented complete unbridled creative freedom, that you could design the entire world, you could design anything. And so to really go on this path, I decided to get a degree in graphic design. And I remember even by the age of 19, already feeling like I was in a rut. I loved design, I still love design, but I got very boxed in, or I felt very boxed in by always designing postcards and posters and brochures. To me, I felt very constrained about only having those things as my medium. I didn't really feel like I was on this path to unbridled creative freedom. And so fast forward to a few years ago, I had just moved to San Francisco, and I was watching a documentary called When We Left Earth. And this was a documentary about NASA and how they were trying to send humans into space for the very first time. And I was watching this documentary, and I became so incredibly inspired by this documentary that I decided that I was going to send someone at NASA an email, someone I had never met, saying that I was a huge fan of what they were doing. I was a fan for like all of a few hours. And if they ever needed, someone like me, someone completely without a science background, that I was here. I didn't expect to ever hear back from this email, but serendipitously, they replied, and I ended up getting a job at NASA from that email. And it completely changed my life and my perspective. They were actually exactly looking for someone like me. They were looking for someone who had no experience with NASA, because I ended up working for a program called CoLab, whose mission was to collaborate between communities inside and outside of NASA. So they wanted someone to really help bridge the gap between the outside of NASA area and everyone within NASA. And so this was just an epic fangirl moment for me. The idea that I could work at NASA was just incredibly inspiring. It was something that was unexpected, and I didn't really self-identify as a space geek growing up. I was always in love with design. I didn't have any problems with science or space. It just wasn't really on my radar. And so I just wanted to share a quick clip from this documentary that sort of better explains why I found it so inspirational and why it motivated me to contact someone at NASA.
To beat the Soviets, NASA must launch a man into Earth orbit. Only rockets can go fast enough.
We knew nothing about rocketry, we knew nothing about spacecraft, we knew nothing about orbits.
I had a big kick out of watching the Mercury astronauts. It was great looking at their eyes.
We're looking at this thing and looking at each other and deciding we want to go back and talk to the engineers a little more before we go further.
And so that's what I love so much about that documentary. It always reminds me of this image here. That NASA didn't exactly know everything that they were doing, that they were figuring things out as they went along. You heard them talking about how they didn't know anything about spacecrafts or rocketry or orbits, and they were figuring it out. And so I was at home watching this and saying, well, I don't know anything about space exploration, and I want to work at NASA. That sounds amazing. And so I got that chance, and it really changed my perspective of NASA from being a bunch of rocket scientists to being a bunch of space hackers, people who were figuring things out, mashing things up, and learning as they went along. So for me, getting to work at NASA was, utterly life-changing, and it changed my perspective. And a lot of it's around, the concept that doing something changes how you see it. So actually doing science and doing space exploration changes your relationship with it from something of observation to something of active participation and contribution. But unfortunately, my fangirl ride sort of came to an abrupt end because the program that I got hired at NASA ran out of funding shortly after I joined. And so I found myself, in an odd situation where I was, kind of not sure what to do, because I felt like I couldn't just have worked at NASA and said, oh yeah, I did space exploration stuff for a gig once, but not again. I was hooked, and I was trying to figure out what to do, though, because I knew that I wanted to still do work in space exploration, but all I had on my resume was this little blip at NASA, and I knew I likely couldn't get hired a second time to do space-related work. And so I did what I could, and I started building things, related to space exploration to sort of claw my way back into the industry and sort of prove why I have a unique perspective and something to add. So in the 2 weeks after leaving NASA, I built spacehack.org, which is a directory of ways for anyone with or without a science background to actively contribute to space exploration. I built this originally in a couple of weeks, full-time, without sleeping much, just using WordPress, because that's what I knew how to use. And I had learned while I was at NASA about all of these great ways that people could contribute to space exploration, but these projects were often buried deep in government websites, or they were difficult to understand. So through SpaceHack, I curated them, I essentially translated them, and I tried to find projects that weren't really so much about self-education, so much as things that really pushed space exploration further, things like discovering new galaxies and building Mars rovers. And so on spacehack.org, there are projects that are really exciting, like Galaxy Zoo Radio, which is a project where you could potentially discover new black holes, which to me is utterly science fiction, the idea of being able to discover black holes in our galaxy. In our own galaxy, and this is an actual image of our galaxy taken by the Spitzer Space Telescope, another favorite space telescope of mine. At the center of our galaxy, there's a supermassive black hole, but there are as many as 100 million black holes across our entire galaxy. And they might only be 2 miles in diameter or so, but they have the mass of our sun. So tiny, but powerful. And to me, black holes always get a bad rep. They're known for gobbling up everything. They're known for gobbling up planets and stars and everything in their path. And while this is true, they also sometimes do the opposite. When they gobble up more than they can chew, they often end up vomiting it back out into the universe and into galaxies violently in the form of mixed up space dust and space gas and space stuff that can go on to create future planets, future stars, and maybe instrumental in creating galaxies and life. So while black holes are these incredibly destructive forces of nature, they're also these incredibly creative forces of nature. They're sort of sampling everything around them, mashing it up, and spitting it back out to create new stuff. So while we can't actually image a black hole, because even light itself can't escape a black hole, we can image a black hole's vomit. So what you're looking at here is the galaxy M83, not the band, but the galaxy, and in that circle, you can see black hole vomit, and that's how people are discovering new black holes. There are other cool projects I've come across in my time, one of which is the Austrian Space Forum. And the Austrian Space Forum is a project that's trying to build a lot of research for people to one day go to Mars. So no matter who goes to Mars one day, they're going to need a lot of research to back them up to do a lot of various activities. And so the Austrian Space Forum tries to get volunteers from all different industries around the world to contribute their knowledge towards building up a body of research to go to Mars. So what you can see in this image is they're actually digging in an ice cave in Austria to try and find signs of microbial life, similar to how someone might do one day on Mars. And you can see they need a lot of things designed. They need to design the spacesuits. They need to design the tools looking for life. They need help from lawyers to create space law. There's a lot of different things that they need help with. And on the subject of sort of searching for alien life, this is another project that I thought was just really, I guess, whimsical in a way, is a way of putting it. Essentially, a group of researchers went around the Earth and sampled the microbial life on the surface of the Earth in a lot of different areas, across deserts, oyster ponds, everywhere. And they created what is here, which is essentially an alien Pantone palette. They created this palette based on the color of life, based on the surface of where they found life around the Earth. And they built this up to not only have all of the colors of what life can look like on the surface of the Earth, but also sort of the size and the shape of it. And they did this because one day we'll be able to hopefully image exoplanets, which are planets beyond our own solar system. And when that happens, those planets might be certain colors, and without having essentially an alien Pantone guide to hold up to compare to those images of planets, we might not know what types of life we could potentially be looking at based on if it was life as we know it. But I often get asked about, what about life as we don't know it? And there was another interesting project that came out of Cornell University that really looked into designing life as we don't know it, designing life based on a lot of elements that are not similar to here on Earth. And so they explicitly looked at the moon of Titan, which is a moon of Saturn, and a group of astronomers collaborated with some chemical engineers, and they designed this, which is a cell membrane that's based on nitrogen, sort of taking concepts of what's present on Titan and how life could possibly look like if it didn't look anything like here on Earth. Another interesting project I've come across was a group of researchers who wanted to scan supernovas, and supernovas are incredibly beautiful things to look at. This image here is a supernova remnant, and to me, they're some of the most beautiful images that you can see in space. But they're just kind of that. They're two-dimensional. We can't really interact with them. So this group wanted to sort of 3D scan supernovas. But you can't exactly take a 3D scanner and hold it up to the sky and hope to get a scan of a supernova that way. And you can't exactly shrink a supernova down and run it through an MRI and hope to get a scan of it that way. But in a sense, that's what this group did, is they actually took open source software called 3D Slicer, and instead of feeding it brain data to do 3D fly-throughs of brains like it normally does, they fed it supernova data. So they fed it the Cassiopeia A supernova remnant, and the result they got was this. This is the very first 3D fly-through of a supernova remnant that was ever created. And so this group of researchers, this project was actually called the Astronomical Medicine Project, which is explicitly designed to try and get the astronomy department and the medical departments at Harvard to collaborate, specifically on sharing visualization tools and a lot of different software, with the idea that if you just got them to swap software and visualization techniques, that you might be able to better see or get better information on the side of space exploration and on the medical side as well, and they've been pretty successful so far. So my own personal recent project with space exploration and space hacking has been this site called Space Probes, which is spaceprob.es. And Space Probes is a site that I designed with my friend who's a developer, Lisa Ballard, and we scraped data from the Deep Space Network. So the Deep Space Network is the network that communicates with most of the space probes in the solar system and tells you where they are. But they didn't really have the data in sort of a highly visual way where you could really just see where all the space probes were at any given time. So we built space probes to do that. So you can see where the space probes in our solar system are at any given time, and we wrote sort of short and sweet blurbs about each space probe, what it does, the types of instruments it has on it, and why you should find it interesting. And so this was just a fun project that we put together based on data that was open and available. So My main project, though, is really designing for what I call massively multiplayer science, which is really about getting people from different disciplines, different backgrounds, different places across the Earth to come together and contribute to science. And it's really about trying to infuse more serendipity into science. I'm not on a mission to try and convert people to drop everything that they're doing and get a PhD in science, unless that's what you want. But I'm trying to get the science and space industries to realize that by sort of giving up on collaborating with people outside of their industry, they're sort of forfeiting the countless clever creations that could come from those collaborations. And in my opinion, that's reckless. So my project here in San Francisco and around the world that's really dedicated to making massively multiplayer science is Science Hack Day. And Science Hack Day is a weekend event in which we get designers, developers, scientists, and all different types of people together in the same physical space to see what they can rapidly prototype with science in 24 consecutive hours. So the mission of Science Hack Day is really to get excited and make things with science. You can make something silly, you can make something serious, it doesn't really matter. We don't issue challenges by design, we just kind of let you go. And Science Hack Day was really born out of this frustration that there's actually a lot of science data and science information out there, but it's not until someone designs an interface to it or makes it more accessible in a lot of different ways that it really does become accessible for people from different backgrounds to contribute to it. So Science Hack Day was really born out of that frustration, and we really want to get people to play around with science and space data and sort of see what they can create. And so I organized the Science Hack Day here in San Francisco. The next one this year is October 14th and 15th. If you would like an invite to Science Hack Day, an early invite, because we do sell out quite quickly, just email me, ariel@arielwaldman.com. I will get you on the list for an early invite. So it's a lot of fun in San Francisco, but I also am the global director of Science Hack Day, and I help people around the world create Science Hack Days in their own city. Anyone can organize a Science Hack Day, so I've had the great pleasure of visiting countries like Colombia, Madagascar, Russia, China, and a number of others. This slide is a little bit, didn't fully come out, but we're now in over 25 countries around the world and growing. So it's been just utterly heartwarming to see it grow. So some of the things that come out of Science Hack Day are things like this. What you're looking at here is someone wanted to design a typeface in which all of the letters would have equal wind drag. I'm not exactly sure why, but so what you're looking at here is a makeshift wind tunnel someone built, and they took each alphabet letter and then they recorded the wind drag of each individual letter and weighted each individual letter so that all the letters would have equal wind drag. So if you want a typeface in which all of the letters have equal wind drag, it looks something like this. The reason why I love this so much is this was a physicist, David Harris, who was playing with typography. And that's really the thing that I love about Science Hack Day, is that we don't treat it where the scientists are the mentors and we're just here to learn from them and do things for them. The scientists are learning how to prototype new things with new technologies, new design techniques, as much as designers and technologists are learning from the scientists. So everyone's the same playing field. Everyone's learning new things and playing around with new stuff that is kind of foreign to them. There have been other projects that came out of Science Hack Day, like the Satellite Symphony, which put satellites that are over your head at any given time to music. Particle Wind Chime, which put subatomic particle collision data to sounds to create an augmented diagnostic tool for particle accelerators. Synesthesia, which is the creepiest hack yet, still with Science Hack Day, which was trying to simulate a form of synesthesia. DNA, which is a cocktail of extracted strawberry DNA that you can drink. This is up on Instructables if you want to try it, but it tastes disgusting. Interactive Planetarium, which was literally creating a planetarium that instead of sitting back and just watching, you would interact with it and you would get a sense of the distances between stars and planets. This went on to become an exhibit at the American Museum of Natural History temporarily. But the thing that I love about Science Hack Day and science and space exploration and science fiction is that it's really all about exploring the unknown. I think this is something that is almost a given in space exploration, and science fiction does really well, is exploring the unknown and really creating provocations for the future and defining new territory. And to me, this is what design should be like. And I really have found that through this unexpected career path and everything that I've been working on since sort of stumbling into NASA and then creating my own projects in space exploration, I've really been able to break out of that original constraining feeling of only designing postcards and websites and only a few mediums. And now I really feel like the universe in its entirety is my medium. So thank you.